"Thank you, Mom. Now get out of my house and never come back. I don't need you anymore." Madison's voice was as cold as steel. I had just signed the papers. The ink was still wet on the deed, transferring everything I had built in 70 years of life into her name when my only daughter spat those words at me. My hands trembled as I clutched the document that had just stripped me of everything. The notary cleared his throat awkwardly, quickly gathering his stamps and papers as if desperate to flee the scene he had just witnessed. I stood frozen, my mouth dry, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. Madison didn't even look at me. She walked around the room, inspecting every corner, as if it were the first time she had ever been there, as if I were a stranger trespassing in her territory. The house still smelled like freshly brewed coffee and the flowers I planted every spring. These walls had watched Madison grow from a little blonde-haired girl running barefoot through the halls into the woman who now expelled me from my own home with a smile that froze my blood. I stepped toward the small table where my husband Robert's photo stood. He had died when Madison was 15. For years I had worked double shifts at the textile factory so she would never go without, so she could study, so she could have the life I never did. My fingers brushed over the dusty frame. Robert would have defended me. Robert would have put Madison in her place. She turned toward me, arms crossed. Her green eyes, the same shade she inherited from her father, pierced me with contempt sharp enough to wound. She was 38 years old, and in that moment, she proved that the decades of love I had given her meant absolutely nothing. The kitchen where I had cooked thousands of meals for her now belonged to her. The garden where I had taught her to plant tomatoes now belonged to her. The bedroom where I had cared for her through chickenpox at 7 years old now belonged to her. Everything was hers, and I was a stranger in my own life. I picked up my purse from the sofa, the same one I had bought with 20 years of savings. I remembered sitting on that couch with her when she brought home her first boyfriend, talking about life, love, and dreams. Now that same couch bore witness to my humiliation. I walked slowly toward the front door. Every step echoed on the wooden floor Robert and I had installed with our own hands. Madison followed not to say goodbye, but to make sure I really left, as if I were a stray dog being chased away. My hand rested on the doorknob, the same door I had opened thousands of times carrying groceries, medicine when Madison was sick, and birthday gifts bought with whatever money was left after covering her needs. I turned one last time. Madison stood at the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, waiting for me to disappear. Her face showed no regret, no trace of the little girl who once told me she loved me every night before bed. I stepped outside and heard the lock click behind me. That sound was like a tombstone falling shut. My tomb? The grave of 70 years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and meals I skipped so she could eat better. The late afternoon sun hit my face, but I felt cold, a chill that rose from inside and froze me to the bone. I walked down the sidewalk of the neighborhood where I had spent my entire adult life, feeling like a ghost. Neighbors waved from their gardens, unaware that I no longer belonged here, that my own daughter had ripped me out of the ground like a weed. Mrs. Carmela waved from her window, motioning me over. She didn't know what had just happened. She didn't know that the woman walking down the street no longer had a home, that the neighbor she had known for 30 years had become homeless because of her own flesh and blood. I kept walking aimlessly. My feet carried me to the park where I used to take Madison when she was little. The swings were still there, rusted with time. I sat on the same bench where I used to watch her play, where I comforted her when she scraped her knees, where I promised I'd always be there for her. The wind rustled through the trees, whispering like voices I didn't want to hear, telling me I had been a fool to trust my own child, to give her everything without keeping anything for myself. A young mother was pushing her baby on the swing that once belonged to Madison. The sight hurt so much I had to look away. That woman didn't know that one day her innocent baby could grow into someone cold, someone who would look at her with disgust and throw her out of her life like trash. Darkness crept over the park. The lights flicked on automatically, but I sat there, not knowing where to go. For the first time in 70 years, I had no place to call home, no bed waiting for me, no kitchen to cook dinner in. The night air bit into my bones. My legs ached from sitting too long on that park bench. I stood, feeling the weight of 70 years pressing down on my shoulders. I needed to find somewhere to sleep, but my mind was blank. I walked toward the bus station, the only place I knew that stayed open all night. It was where the homeless went when they had nowhere else. Now I was one of them, a woman cast out by her own daughter. As I walked, memories flooded back. Madison was 5 when she woke me in the middle of the night after a nightmare. I held her in my arms and carried her to my bed. She slept curled against me all night, her tiny face pressed to my chest, her small fingers gripping my nightgown. "Mommy, promise you'll never leave me alone?" she whispered through tears. I stroked her hair and promised I would always protect her, that no one would ever love her more than I did. What cruel irony. Now she was the one who left me alone. I reached the bus station and sat on a cold metal bench. The air reeked of urine and human misery. 2 men lay sleeping on the floor wrapped in cardboard and filthy rags. A young woman with a baby begged the few passengers waiting for the last bus of the night. I clutched my purse to my chest like a life preserver. Inside were my ID, a few crumpled bills, and an old photo of Madison on her college graduation day. The picture that once filled me with pride now burned my hands. The security guard approached, eyeing me suspiciously. He was a young man in a wrinkled uniform with a hard, tired face. He looked me up and down as if I were a criminal. "Ma'am, this isn't a shelter. If you're not getting on a bus, you can't stay here," I explained, my voice trembling, that I had nowhere to go, that my daughter had thrown me out. He listened with a blank expression, as if he'd heard that story 1,000 times. "Look, lady, I don't make the rules. There's a homeless shelter a few blocks from here. Go there if you need a roof." Homeless. That word hit me like a slap. Me, who had worked all my life, who had raised a daughter, who had once been a respectable woman, now reduced to a homeless beggar with no roof, no family. I left the station, dragging my feet. The streets were dark and nearly empty. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every sound made me flinch. At my age, walking alone through the city at night was dangerous, but I had no choice. After about 20 minutes, I found the shelter a decaying building with peeling paint and a rusted metal door. A line of people waited outside, dirty men reeking of alcohol, gaunt women muttering to themselves, barefoot children clinging to their mothers' skirts. I took my place at the end of the line, feeling completely out of place. I once had a home, a life, a daughter who was supposed to love me, but reality was cruel. Now I was just like the rest, waiting for a filthy mattress to survive the night. The woman in front of me turned around and smiled with the few teeth she had left. Her face was etched with years of pain and abandonment. First, "Time here, huh? I can tell. You've still got that look of shock we all had at the start." I nodded, unable to speak, my throat tightening as tears threatened. She placed a wrinkled hand on my shoulder. "Don't worry, you'll get used to it. It hurts at first, but after a while your heart turns to stone. It's the only way to survive when your own kids betray you." Her words hit deep because I saw in her eyes the same pain I felt, the pain of a mother abandoned by her own child, of giving everything and being left with nothing. The line moved slowly. When it was my turn, a plump nun asked for my information and wrote it in an old ledger. Sharon Harris, 70 years old. No fixed address. Those 3 words summed up what my life had become in a single afternoon. From a respectable mother with a home of her own, I had become a homeless woman, no roof, no family. They assigned me a cot in the women's dormitory. It was a large, stuffy room filled with rows of makeshift beds. Some women were already asleep, others whispered or wept silently. The air was thick with the scent of humanity and despair. I lay down still fully dressed, clutching my purse against my chest. The ceiling above me was stained with damp marks that looked like distorted faces staring down. The cracked walls seemed to whisper stories of pain and abandonment. I closed my eyes, trying to sleep, but my thoughts wouldn't stop. I thought of Madison, sleeping comfortably in her new house. My house. I imagined her celebrating her victory after getting rid of me. I thought about all the years I had wasted believing that a mother's love could never break. A drop of water fell from the ceiling onto my forehead every few minutes, rhythmic and hypnotic amid the heavy silence of the shelter. Beside me, a woman coughed endlessly, a sound that reminded me of my own mother before she died. On the other side, someone sobbed softly, as if afraid to disturb anyone even with her sorrow. I sat up and looked through the grimy window toward the street. The streetlights cast long, shifting shadows that danced like ghosts. I thought of my bed, my clean sheets scented with fabric softener, my pillow molded perfectly by years of use. All of it now belonged to Madison. A raspy voice cut through my thoughts. It was the toothless woman I'd met in line. "Can't sleep, huh? The first night's always the hardest." I sat on the edge of the cot, desperate to talk to someone before I lost my mind. My daughter kicked me out after I signed the papers over to her. I didn't expect this. She let out a bitter laugh that sounded more like a bark than laughter. "Of course you didn't. No one expects the knife in the back, especially when it comes from their own child. I didn't expect it either when my son put me in a nursing home and took my pension," she said, her words chilling me to the core. There were others like me, mothers betrayed by the children they had raised with love and sacrifice. "How long have you been here?" I asked. 3 years. My son visits sometimes, pretending to be caring, but he never takes me out of this hell. He brings cheap chocolate bars and tells me he loves me, but his actions say otherwise." I stayed silent, processing her words. 3 years of misery because of an ungrateful child. 3 years sleeping on dirty cots and eating leftovers. 3 years invisible to the world. The night dragged on, thick and slow as tar. At breakfast, I lined up with the other homeless women. They handed each of us a piece of stale bread, a cup of watery coffee, and a bruised piece of fruit. I ate quietly, chewing slowly, not from hunger, but to fill the emptiness inside. The pain had already taken up all the space in my stomach. When the morning sun began to warm the streets, I left the shelter. I had no idea where to go or what to do. For the first time in my life, I had no routine, no coffee to brew, no bed to make, no plants to water, nothing. I wandered through downtown as the city slowly came alive. Store owners opened their doors, office workers hurried to their jobs, students rushed to make it to class on time. Everyone had a purpose, a place to go, everyone but me. I stopped in front of the church where Madison had been baptized. The bells were ringing for the early Mass. I remembered taking her there every Sunday for years, teaching her to pray, to ask God to protect her. What cruel irony that now I was the one who needed her protection. I stepped inside, seeking peace. The church was nearly empty, just a few women whispering their rosaries and a man kneeling before the altar. I sat in the last pew, staring at the crucifix hanging above. Where had I gone wrong? When had my love turned into a burden for Madison? I had worked day and night to give her everything. I had sacrificed my own dreams so she could chase hers. I never remarried after Robert died, thinking she needed me. Father Patrick, who had known me for years, approached my pew. He was an older man with a kind face and hands, softened by years of blessing others. "Sharon, what a surprise to see you so early. How's Madison?" The question cut deep. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't tell him the truth. I was too ashamed to admit my own daughter had thrown me out like a stray dog. "She's fine, Father. Busy with work." He nodded with a warm smile. "I'm glad to hear that. I always knew that girl would go far. You raised her well, Sharon. You must be proud." Proud. That word sounded strange now. For most of my life, I had been proud of Madison, her grades, her graduation, her job, her independence, but now all that pride had turned into pain and betrayal. "Yes, Father, I'm very proud," I lied, hiding the truth behind a weak smile. Father Patrick gave me his blessing and walked away. I remained seated, feeling like a fraud, like someone who no longer belonged in God's house after failing so miserably as a mother. When the Mass ended, I quietly left the church. The sun was high, the heat heavy. My clothes, the same ones I'd worn all night, were starting to smell. My hair was greasy and tangled. My face showed every ounce of exhaustion and sorrow I carried inside. I passed a shop window and caught my reflection. At first, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. That woman looked like a beggar, eyes swollen from crying, cheeks hollow from grief, her defeated gaze terrifying me. This was all that was left of Sharon Harris. This was all that was left of a woman who had fought her whole life. This was all that was left of a mother who had given everything for her child. I kept walking, half in a daze. My feet ached inside shoes never meant for walking so far. Each step was torture, but stopping meant thinking, and thinking hurt more than moving. I paused in front of a cafe where Madison and I used to have breakfast when she was a teenager. On Saturday mornings, after shopping at the farmer's market, we would sit by the window, order toast with jam, and she would tell me about her friends, the boys she liked, her dreams for the future. Through the glass, I saw a young mother eating breakfast with her little girl. The child's face was smeared with chocolate, giggling as her mother wiped it away with a napkin. The sight tightened my chest. That woman had no idea that one day her sweet little girl could become her worst enemy. A familiar voice made me turn. It was Bella, my 18-year-old granddaughter, Madison's daughter. She rushed toward me, worry in her eyes. "Grandma Sharon, what are you doing out here so early? You look exhausted." Bella had always been different from her mother. She had Robert's kind heart and the sensitivity Madison had lost long ago. Seeing her was like seeing a beam of light in the dark. "Hello, sweetheart, I'm fine. I was just taking a walk." But Bella wasn't easily fooled. She looked at me, closely, gently taking my hand. "Grandma, your clothes are all wrinkled, and you smell strange. Where did you sleep last night?" I couldn't lie to her. Bella was the only one who still truly loved me. So, I told her everything. I told her that her mother had thrown me out after I signed the house over, that I had slept in a homeless shelter, that I felt like I had died inside my own life. Bella wrapped her arms around me, and I broke down, crying on her shoulder. She smelled of youthful perfume and hope. It was the first real hug I had received since leaving my home. "Grandma, this can't be real. Mom wouldn't do that. There must be a misunderstanding." I explained there was none, that her mother's words had been crystal clear, that I had been thrown out like garbage. Bella stepped back, tears brimming in her eyes. "Come with me, Grandma. I'm going to talk to her right now. We can't just let this go." We walked together toward the house that used to be mine. Bella held my arm, giving me strength just by being there. For the first time since that awful night, I didn't feel completely alone. When we arrived, Bella knocked hard. Madison opened the door, irritation flashing across her face until she saw her daughter. "Bella? Why are you here so early? Shouldn't you be at school?" "Mom, we need to talk. How could you kick Grandma out of her own house?" Madison's eyes darted past Bella, landing on me standing on the sidewalk. Her gaze, cold and piercing, froze me. "That woman doesn't live here anymore. This is my house now, and I decide who comes in and who doesn't." Bella walked in first, Madison following close behind. I stayed outside on the porch, feeling like a stranger in front of the home that had once been mine. Through the open window, I could hear them arguing clearly. "Mom, that's Grandma. You can't treat her like this." "That woman manipulated me my entire life," Madison snapped. "She made me sign those papers so she could control me. That house was Grandma's. She gave it to you because she loved you. Love doesn't pay the bills, Bella. That woman is a parasite, living off other people's guilt." Her words struck me like a hammer to the heart. Parasite, manipulator. That was how my own daughter saw me, how she justified her cruelty. Moments later, Bella stormed out, her face flushed with anger, her hands trembling. "Grandma, Mom's not herself. She's sick. She says you made her miserable and she couldn't take it anymore." Miserable? What had I ever done to make Madison miserable? Worked my hands raw to feed her, cared for her every time she was sick, supported every dream she ever had, sacrificed my own happiness so she could have peace? "Don't worry, sweetheart," I whispered. "Your mom has the right to live her life." But Bella grabbed my hand, her voice breaking. "Grandma, you can't live on the streets. Come stay with me. I have a small apartment near campus." Her kindness brought tears to my eyes, but I couldn't let myself become her burden. "No, sweetheart. You need to focus on school, on your future. You can't carry an old woman like me. You're not a burden, Grandma. You're my family, the only real family I have left." Her words gave me strength. Bella truly loved me, unlike her mother. I accepted her offer because, honestly, I had no other choice. We got into Bella's old car, the one she had bought with her weekend job savings. As we pulled away, I looked back one last time through the rear-view mirror. Madison stood at the living room window watching us leave, her face blank, no sadness, no remorse, only satisfaction. Satisfaction that she had rid herself of the problem that was her mother. Bella's apartment was small but warm. It had a cozy living room, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom, and one bedroom. Everything was neat and bright, filled with the spirit of an 18-year-old, building her life. "Grandma, please sleep in my bed. I'll take the couch." "No, sweetheart, I'll sleep on the couch." "I won't take your bed," Bella insisted, but I stood firm. I had caused enough trouble already. I sat down on the couch and looked around the room filled with pictures of Bella over the years. In many of them, I was there holding her as a baby, running with her in the garden, hugging her during her birthday parties. In none of them was Madison beside me. Now I understood why. Bella brewed coffee in the small kitchen. The aroma filled the air, bringing back memories of mornings at home, mornings when I made coffee while waiting for Madison to come down for breakfast. Those mornings now felt like they belonged to another lifetime. Bella sat next to me, handing me a cup with shaking hands. "Grandma, please tell me the truth. What really happened to Mom? People don't just turn like that overnight." I took a sip of the bitter coffee, closed my eyes, and the memories rushed in. For years, I had stayed silent to protect Madison's image in Bella's heart. "Your mother changed after she married your father. When he left, you were only 5. From then on, she grew distant, cold as if every failure in her life was somehow my fault." Bella listened quietly, her eyes wiser than her age. She started criticizing everything I did, my cooking, my cleaning, even how I spoke. She made me feel like an embarrassment. "Around you, she acted like a good daughter, but when it was just us, she treated me like the help." The words poured out of me like poison finally released. Bella squeezed my hand tightly. "Last year, Mom said she needed to transfer the house title to get a bank loan, told you it was just paperwork, that you could live there for the rest of your life. That was a lie, wasn't it?" "Yes, sweetheart, it was a lie. Your mother had planned it long ago. She just waited for the right moment to get rid of me." Bella stood up, pacing the small room, her voice shaking with fury. "Grandma, we can't let this go. I'll find a lawyer, we'll fight and take the house back." Her determination moved me, but it also scared me. "No, don't get involved in this with your mother. I don't want you in trouble. She's still your mom." "No, Grandma, you're the only one I really have. Mom was never there. Always working, always busy, always finding excuses. You're the one who raised me, comforted me, helped me with school." Tears streamed down Bella's cheeks, breaking my heart. "When Dad left, Mom brought me to live with you because she didn't know how to take care of a child alone. You were my real mother all these years. And now she's treating you like this." I hugged Bella tightly, feeling both our pain merge into one. "It's all right, sweetheart. We'll get through this. We're strong, you and I." Bella stepped back, her eyes blazing with the same resolve Robert once had when he made an important decision. "Grandma will fight. No matter how long it takes or how much it costs, we'll get justice." That afternoon, Bella took me downtown to meet a lawyer. We went to a small office she'd found in the newspaper. The receptionist told us to wait in the lobby filled with law books that made me feel small and out of place. The lawyer, Mr. Richard Miller, was a middle-aged man with a serious face but kind eyes. He listened carefully, taking detailed notes in a faded yellow notebook. "Mrs. Harris," he said gently. "Unfortunately, cases like this happen more often than people think. Children take advantage of their parents' trust to seize property." His words stung. I wasn't the only mother betrayed by her child. "Is there any way to fix it?" Bella asked, her voice trembling. "It depends on the contract," Mr. Miller replied. "If we can prove deception or coercion, we can request to void the transfer, but I'll need to review the documents." I explained that Madison had all the papers. He nodded. "Don't worry. I can request copies from the Property Records Office. We'll also need witnesses who can testify about the circumstances under which you signed." As we left the office, I felt a mix of hope and dread. Bella was energized, convinced we could win, but I knew Madison better than anyone. She wouldn't stay quiet. That night, while Bella studied, I lay awake on the couch. For the first time in a long time, I felt a faint spark of hope. I got up, found some paper and a pen, and began to write. I had to pour everything out, the pain, the anger buried for years. My hand shook as I wrote, "I deserve better than this." Those 4 words felt like a release, lifting a weight I had carried all my life. For years I had accepted Madison's cruelty, believing I deserved it. I had thought being a mother meant enduring everything without complaint, but that wasn't true. I deserved respect, kindness, a dignified home in my final years. I kept writing, letting the words flow like breath. I wrote about the pain of betrayal, the emptiness of being abandoned by the person you loved most, the shame of realizing how naive I had been. I wrote about the anger slowly replacing the sorrow. I don't need anyone's permission to start over. That sentence stunned me. Starting over at 70 wasn't impossible. I still had enough strength to rebuild my life from nothing. I looked over at Bella, asleep on the bed, her book still open on the small desk. She had risked her relationship with her mother just to help me. She had opened her home without hesitation, proving to me that real love still existed. For her and for myself, I had to stand up again. I had to show Madison that I was no longer the weak, easily manipulated woman she thought I was. I had to reclaim my dignity, even if it was the last thing I did. I folded the paper and slipped it carefully into my purse. Those words would be my strength in the days ahead, a reminder that my worth was greater than my daughter's contempt. The following days passed in a strange but peaceful rhythm. Bella left early for school every morning, while I stayed in her little apartment, slowly adjusting to this new life. Mornings were the hardest, when I had time to think, to remember, to feel the full weight of betrayal. But I also began to feel something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. I no longer had to walk quietly to avoid upsetting Madison. I no longer endured her cruel remarks about my cooking, my clothes, my voice. I no longer had to pretend that her coldness didn't hurt me. On Wednesday morning, my lawyer, Mr. Richard Miller, called. His tone was serious. "Mrs. Harris, I need you to come to the office immediately. There's something important we need to discuss." Bella skipped class to come with me. On the way there, I tried to prepare myself for bad news, but nothing could have prepared me for what he was about to say. "Your daughter didn't just transfer the house into her name, she also filed another document claiming you owe her money for 5 years of care." I froze where I sat. Bella's face went pale as she gripped my hand. "That's impossible. My grandmother never signed anything like that." Mr. Miller handed me a copy. My signature, perfectly forged, was on a statement saying I owed Madison $50,000 for medical care, food, and housing expenses. "This is fake," Bella nearly shouted. "My grandmother would never sign this." Mr. Miller sighed heavily. "I believe you, but proving forgery will be difficult and expensive. Your daughter planned this carefully." We left the office drained. Madison had thought of everything, not just stealing my home, but creating a false debt to justify it. "Grandma, we can't give up. We have to keep fighting," Bella said, her eyes burning with determination. I felt both touched and terrified. She was using up her savings and missing classes to help me. I couldn't let her destroy her future for my sake. That afternoon, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years: visit my old neighbor, Mrs. Martha Thompson. We had been close friends for decades, but when Madison began treating me badly, I gradually cut myself off from everyone. Mrs. Martha still lived just a few blocks from my old house. When she opened the door and saw me, her smile was warm and genuine. "Good heavens, Sharon, it's been ages. Come in, come in." Her home still carried that familiar scent of cinnamon that brought back memories of gentler years. I told her everything. She listened quietly, but anger soon flashed in her eyes. I always knew something wasn't right with that girl, Madison. The way she spoke to you when she thought no one could hear so rude. You knew? I whispered, stunned. Sharon, neighbors aren't blind. We all saw how she yelled at you while you were doing laundry, how she made you feel small over nothing. I sat there speechless, realizing my humiliation had been public all along. There was one time, Martha continued, when she threw away the dinner you cooked just because she said it was too salty. That was cruel, Sharon. Just cruel. Tears welled up, not from sadness, but relief. Someone had finally seen what I'd endured. Martha, would you be willing to testify for me? Of course, and not just me. Others around here saw everything too. We all worried about you. I left her house feeling something I hadn't in a long time. I wasn't alone. People had seen, people knew, and some were willing to help. That evening, I called Mr. Miller and told him the news. He sounded more optimistic. If we can establish a clear pattern of emotional abuse, we can challenge the transfer. This could turn the case in our favor. For the first time in days, a small flame of hope flickered inside me. That night, Bella came home carrying Chinese takeout, forcing a smile. Grandma, I have good news. My friend from law school said there are organizations that help elderly victims of family abuse. I'll reach out tomorrow. We ate quietly, both lost in our thoughts. Bella studied while I opened my notebook and began to write again. The words poured out of me like they'd been waiting for years. The day will come when they stop looking down on me. I underlined the sentence several times. It was a promise, a declaration of rebellion against the quiet submission that had bound me for so long. I stood by the apartment window, gazing at the glowing city lights. Thousands of people were out there living, fighting their own battles. I was one of them now, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. Bella came to stand beside me. What are you thinking, Grandma? I'm thinking your grandfather Robert would be proud of you, of how you're standing up for me, even when your mother turned away. Bella hugged me, her hair smelling faintly of soap, warm, alive, young. He'd be proud of you too, Grandma, for not giving up. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. I dreamed of Robert, of our early years when we were poor but happy. I dreamed of Madison as a little girl, before life hardened her heart. I dreamed of myself, strong again, no longer bowing to anyone. When I woke, I knew something inside me had shifted. The defeated woman was gone, replaced by a mother determined to reclaim her dignity. I picked up my pen and wrote one final line. I'm not fighting for revenge. I'm fighting to take back what's rightfully mine. The words echoed in my mind as I brewed my morning coffee. I didn't want to hurt Madison. I just wanted to reclaim my place in this world, the right to be respected, and the home Robert and I had built with our sweat and dreams. The battle was only beginning, but this time I felt certain I would win. On Friday morning, Bella and I went to the senior legal aid office her friend had mentioned. The place was small but warm, decorated with posters about elder rights and protection laws. The director, Mrs. Juliana Scott, was in her 40s, with kind but determined eyes. Mrs. Harris, your case isn't unusual, she said. We get stories like yours almost every day. Financial abuse by adult children is more common than most people realize. Her words lifted a weight from me. I wasn't crazy. What I had gone through had a name: domestic abuse. The most important thing now, she continued, is to document everything, every insult, every humiliation, every moment your daughter made you feel worthless. It will all serve as evidence for the case. Mrs. Scott handed me a stack of forms, asking for details about my relationship with Madison, her psychological mistreatment, and my financial situation before and after the house transfer. As I began writing, memories crashed over me like a painful flood. I remembered Madison yelling at me in front of Bella because I burned the rice. I remembered her forbidding me from using the bathroom, saying I made it dirty. I remembered the nights I cried silently after her cruel remarks. "Grandma, are you okay?" Bella asked softly, noticing my trembling hand. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I whispered, just remembering things I wish I could forget. Mrs. Scott reviewed my pages, her face serious. Occasionally, she nodded and jotted notes in the margins. "Mrs. Harris, with what you've provided and the neighbors' testimonies, we can proceed with a formal case. It won't be easy, and it will take time, but there's a real chance you could win." When we left the office, Bella and I were exhausted but hopeful. She held my hand, her voice shaky yet firm. "Grandma, I'm so proud of you. You're so strong." Her words warmed my heart. Bella saw me as a brave woman now, not the pitiful figure I used to see in the mirror. That afternoon, while Bella was at school, I decided to take a walk. I needed to reconnect with the woman I had been before. Years of pain had made me so small. I went to the park where I used to take Madison as a child. The air smelled faintly of grass, and children's laughter filled the space. Everything was the same, only I had changed. I sat on the same bench where I'd cried the night Madison threw me out. It felt like a lifetime ago, though it had only been 2 weeks. In that short time, I'd discovered strength I never knew I had. A woman in her 60s sat down beside me, wearing a floral dress that reminded me of my younger days. "Excuse me," she said. "Aren't you Sharon Harris?" I turned, surprised. "Yes, that's me. I'm Joanna Reed. We used to work together at the textile factory." Memories flooded back those long shifts, the sore hands, but also the purpose that had kept me going, each day bringing me closer to giving Madison a better future. "Joanna, it's so good to see you again." "I always admired you, Sharon. You were strong, resilient, you never gave up." Her words pierced through the darkness inside me. I had forgotten who I was before Madison made me believe I was worthless. "How's your daughter?" I remember she was such a bright, sweet girl. The question tightened my chest, but I chose honesty. "She kicked me out after I signed the house over. I'm living with my granddaughter now." Joanna's eyes widened in disbelief. "I can't believe that. After everything you sacrificed for her?" "That's life, Joanna. Some children just don't value what their parents give them." "Don't say that. You were a wonderful mother. If she can't see that, the fault is hers, not yours." We talked for an hour about our days at the factory, our old coworkers, the strength we had back then when everything we did was for our children. Before leaving, Joanna hugged me tightly. "You're still the strong woman, Remember, don't let anyone convince you otherwise." I returned to Bella's apartment feeling renewed. That meeting reminded me who I truly was. A mother who had survived widowhood, poverty, and decades of hard work. I was no longer the weak woman Madison wanted me to believe I was. That evening, Bella came home with excitement in her eyes. "Grandma, I spoke with my civil law professor. He said cases like yours have actually won in court before. The key is proving a consistent pattern of psychological abuse." We ate dinner while she eagerly explained legal details. Her enthusiasm was contagious. "Bella," I said gently, "promise me something. Don't let this ruin your future. If it gets too difficult or expensive, we'll stop." She set her pen down and looked at me seriously. "Grandma, this isn't just for you. It's for all the elderly women who've been mistreated by their children. This is about justice." Her words brought tears to my eyes. Bella wasn't just fighting for me, she was fighting for the dignity of every mother who had ever been abandoned. That night, I wrote again in my notebook. The pen moved across the page as if freed from years of silence. I wrote about the factory days, waking up at 5 a.m. and working 12-hour shifts. I wrote about the nights I stayed up sewing Madison's school uniforms with aching hands. I wrote about the pride I'd felt watching her graduate. I wrote about the mother who deserved respect, not disdain. At the bottom of the page I wrote, "I am Sharon Harris, 70 years old, and I am worth more than my daughter's contempt." Those words etched themselves into my heart like an invisible tattoo. They were my declaration of emotional independence, a cry of defiance after years of submission. Bella came over and read over my shoulder. "Grandma, that's beautiful. Are you going to send it to Mom?" "No, sweetheart. I wrote it for myself to remind me who I am when everything falls apart." She hugged me, and in her arms I felt all the love Madison had denied me. On Monday morning, light rain tapped against the windows. I woke early, before Bella, brewed coffee, and prepared myself. Today, we would officially file the lawsuit against Madison. I put on my navy blue suit, the one I'd bought years ago for Bella's graduation. I wanted to look dignified, like the respectable woman I had always been, not a victim thrown out of her own home. Bella ate breakfast with me in silence. We both knew this was the day that could change my life forever. "Grandma," she said softly, "whatever happens, I'm proud of you." Her words gave me courage. We arrived at the courthouse downtown. Mr. Miller was waiting on the steps, a thick folder of documents tucked under his arm. "Mrs. Harris, today we file the official complaint. Your daughter will be notified and required to respond to our allegations." We entered the imposing building, with its cold halls and endless rooms where people's fates were decided. I felt small within those walls, but Bella took my arm and reminded me I wasn't alone. At the clerk's office, Mr. Miller handed in the paperwork. The clerk reviewed it with a bored expression, as if this were just another case. For him, it was routine. For me, it was my whole life. "The defendant has 15 days to respond," the clerk said, stamping the papers. As we stepped outside, I took a deep breath. We had taken the first official step toward reclaiming my dignity and my home. "Now we wait," Mr. Miller said. "In the meantime, we'll keep gathering evidence." That afternoon, we went to Martha's house so she could sign her statement. She welcomed us with a tray of warm cookies and a determined smile. "Sharon, I just remembered more things. Years ago, I saw Madison going through your mail, checking your expenses and scolding you whenever you bought something for yourself. She even made up excuses to keep you from Nativline. Seeing friends, that's systematic emotional abuse." Mr. Miller nodded. "Mrs. Harris, your daughter has been planning this for years." Hearing that made my blood run cold. The idea that Madison had been plotting her mother's humiliation long before it happened hurt more than the betrayal itself. Bella and I went back to the apartment after dark. She needed to study for an important exam, and I needed time to process everything that had happened that day. I sat on the sofa, opened my notebook, but couldn't write a single word. My mind was thick with too many emotions. The phone rang. Bella answered, and within seconds her face changed. "It's my mom," she whispered, covering the receiver. My heart pounded so fast it felt ready to burst. It was the first time Madison had called me since she'd thrown me out of the house. Bella handed me the phone. "Madison," I said, my hand trembling. Her voice was cold as ever, yet something about it was different. I got a notice from the court. "Are you really suing me, Mom?" The question struck like a slap. She didn't ask how I was, where I was living, whether I was okay. She only cared about the lawsuit. "Yes, Madison. I'm trying to get my home back." "My home?" She gave a sharp, bitter laugh. "That house is mine. You gave it to me because you knew it was the right thing to do. I signed because you said it was just paperwork. You promised Leo could stay there until the end of his life. I have no obligation to keep promises to a woman who manipulates others with her emotions." Her words stabbed deep, but this time, I didn't collapse. Instead of sorrow, I felt anger rising. "Madison, I never manipulated you. I just loved you, like any mother would." "Love?" she snapped. "You smothered me with that so-called love. You never let me live my own life. I always had to be the perfect daughter so you could brag about your sacrifices." For the first time, I understood the root of her resentment. She saw my love as a cage, my sacrifices as a burden she never wanted. "If you felt trapped, why didn't you say so? We could have talked like adults." "Talk? All you ever do is preach and remind me of everything you've done for me." Bella snatched the phone from my hand, her face flushed with fury. "How can you be so cruel? Grandma gave you everything, and you threw her out like garbage." I could still hear Madison shouting through the receiver before Bella hung up. "Don't listen to her, Grandma," she said softly. "She's just trying to justify what she did." I sat still, thinking about the conversation. For the first time, I saw Madison's side, even if I couldn't agree with it. Maybe I had been too protective, but that didn't justify her cruelty. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "Maybe I wasn't a perfect mother. Maybe my love suffocated her. But I didn't deserve such brutality." Bella read it and whispered, "You're not a bad mother. You're a real one. You did the best you could." Her words warmed me, but I knew this was only the beginning. The legal battle ahead would be hard, and Madison wouldn't give up easily. I went to bed feeling both fearful and determined. I was no longer the weak woman thrown out of her house. I was someone fighting to reclaim her dignity. The following months were a blur of hearings, testimonies, and sleepless nights. Madison hired an aggressive lawyer who painted me as a toxic, controlling mother who had manipulated her daughter for years. Every court session felt like emotional torture, with my life dissected before strangers. But I had changed. I refused to stay silent. Whenever I was questioned, I answered clearly and firmly. Bella was always beside me, her steady presence giving me strength. Not only Martha, but several other neighbors testified. Mr. Joseph from the corner and Joanna Reed both spoke of what they had seen, how Madison shouted at me, humiliated me, and controlled every part of the household. Their testimonies painted a vivid picture of years of psychological abuse. The hardest moment came when Madison took the stand. She looked elegant as ever in a simple black dress, calm and composed. Her voice was steady and strong. My mother made me feel guilty for living my own life. Every boyfriend, every job, every decision I made had to go through her approval. When I got divorced, she made me feel like a failure. Her words hurt because there was a trace of truth in them. Maybe I had been too protective, too afraid to see her hurt, but nothing could justify the cruelty she'd shown me. When it was my turn, I rose to speak. My legs trembled, but my mind was clear. I looked directly at Madison. "You're right, I wasn't perfect. I may have been wrong to try to protect you too much, but I didn't deserve to be thrown out like trash. You took everything I built over 70 years. If my love ever suffocated you, you could have said so. We could have fixed things, but you chose the cruelest path." Madison avoided my eyes the entire time. When I finished, a few people in the courtroom were crying, but my daughter's eyes remained cold and dry. 3 weeks later, the judge delivered the verdict. Bella and I sat waiting, hearts pounding. Mr. Miller walked in with a serious expression. The judge's voice echoed. There was clear evidence of psychological abuse, and the property transfer had been made under emotional pressure. However, because the documents had been legally executed, the transaction couldn't be fully reversed. The final ruling was to divide the assets. Madison would keep the house but had to pay me compensation equal to half its value, about $250,000, and cover all legal expenses. It wasn't a complete victory, but it wasn't a loss either. I had enough to buy a small apartment and live out my years in peace. Madison left the courtroom without looking at me once. Her lawyer went over to Mr. Miller to discuss payment details. Bella hugged me tightly, tears running down her cheeks. "You did it, Grandma. You showed her you're not someone to be trampled on anymore." 3 months later, I moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood. For the first time in years, I could call a place my own. The apartment was modest, but full of light. I could cook in my little kitchen without anyone criticizing me, and I planted tomatoes and flowers on the terrace. Life was simple, peaceful. Every weekend, Bella came to visit. We cooked together, talked about her studies and future plans. We rarely mentioned Madison, unless Bella brought her up herself. One Saturday afternoon, she arrived with an unusual expression. "Grandma, Mom wants to see you. She says she wants to apologize." I froze. Nearly a year without a word, and now she wanted to say sorry. "What do you think, Bella?" "I think you should hear her out, but only if you truly want to. You don't owe her forgiveness." I thought for a long time before agreeing to meet Madison at a quiet cafe far from our old neighborhood, away from all those painful memories. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a back table. She looked thinner, her eyes hollowed by sleepless nights. "Mom," she said softly as I sat down, "thank you for coming." "What do you want, Madison?" "I want to apologize. I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt you." Her voice was sincere, but my heart stayed guarded. "Why now? After all this time?" She sighed, her voice trembling. "Because Bella hasn't spoken to me in months. Because I realized I lost the 2 most important women in my life, my mother and my daughter, because of my own selfishness and cruelty." She told me she'd started therapy, that she'd come to understand her resentment came from childhood, from losing her father too early and taking out her anger on me. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said quietly. "I just want you to know I truly regret everything." I listened in silence. Part of me wanted to take her hand, to say everything was behind us. But another part, the part that had learned self-respect, knew forgiveness takes time. "Madison, thank you for saying that. But this will take time. A lot of time." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know. I destroyed what we had, and it'll take years to rebuild it." We parted with an awkward but genuine hug. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a beginning. That night, I sat by the window of my apartment and wrote the final lines in my notebook. In the end, it's not the house or the money that defines us, but our ability to rise again and again. I brewed a cup of tea and sat on the balcony, watching the city lights stretch into the distance. A year later, at 71, I finally understood that real love cannot be begged, for it can only be given freely. Dignity cannot be traded, and a woman can start over as many times as she needs. Later that evening, Bella came over with a pizza and a few movies. We curled up together on my new sofa, in my new home, in my new life. For the first time in many years, I felt truly at peace. Life doesn't always give us easy answers. Some wounds only time can soften. Some relationships, even when broken, leave a quiet love that never disappears. I once thought forgiveness meant forgetting, but now I know it means letting go of the burden, choosing peace for yourself. Madison may never be the same, but I still hope she finds her own path, the path I once tried to clear for her out of love. Family is never perfect, neither are we. But when we're brave enough to look back, to face the truth, and to learn how to love without control, that's when we truly grow. And what about you? What do you think about the line between love, sacrifice, and self-respect? Share your thoughts in the comments. Below, I want to hear your story too. And if you believe anyone can start again, at any age, stay with me for the next stories, where together we'll learn, heal, and keep believing in the good that still lives in people's hearts.